There we go. Right. Hello. So I'm Drew, and I am the one of the quality leads in the business technology team at BGL. My story kind of goes in parallel, but in a different direction to Steve. So as you see, my talk is actually on bespoke automation rather than a variety of tools that come off the shelves. So I think everybody knows compare the market, but you may not necessarily know what BGL do. So I'll give you in particular my team. So I'll give you a very quick tour. My team is very much back office. It's not mobile at all. It is concentrating on rating and underwriting specifically. As the BGL group, we manage 32 different insurance panels, companies like Post Office, like O2, and each one of those panels is made up of anywhere between 3 and 20 insurance underwriters, so like a Viva or a GS or companies like that. Across those, every day we manage about 10 million quotes and for requests for prices. All of those go through a very niche program which is called Polaris, which is what we use for our rating engine. And Polaris basically works with self-contained pieces of development which are plugged into it, containing rating and underwriting structures. So from that very quick description, if you were to write a test strategy on how you would test one of these things, you might have a clear idea and think, well, these are the type of things that I might start thinking about if I wanted to do some testing for it. And I've actually now worked in this team for 8 years, and when I joined, I had a fairly clear idea of what sort of things I would expect to see. And over that time, we've been on quite a journey. So I'm going to just talk you through some of the decisions we made. So 8 years ago when I joined, so these are the type of things we were talking about. Our test coverage, our approach was that our test coverage would be exhaustive. And we could test everything, and we would test everything. And if we missed anything, or any areas got to live, that was the tester's fault. And that was, and they were blamed for that. At some point in the time that we've been doing this work, someone had understood that regression was important, and we had to do regression testing. So what we did is we had a sort of creaking RPG program that was in our AS400 system that would find about 500 sort of risk profiles, and we'd see what prices we got from them. That process tended to take each run for about 5 days. And I say about 5 days because probably 60–70% of the time you'd get to the 5th day and then it would crash and you'd lose everything. So because this was really unreliable and because of the strains we were under, what we found is that the developers and the testers were cutting corners, and we were skipping bits of the process, we were putting things live without that stuff done. So having looked at the processes, what we decided to do is we would set up a quality assurance team, and we'd have 2 people actually sit and audit the work we were doing every month and see who was skipping process, and we'd call them out on it. And this was brilliant because when something went live and we found we'd skipped a process, we had someone else to blame because we could blame the QA team for not finding that first. So everything was great. Automation, it kind of wasn't a thing. So we kind of took the attitude, you know, people need to look at these tests. You know, you can't have a computer looking at tests. People need to be looking at. We do end-to-end tests, and we can't rely on a computer to check these things. That's true, by the way. But yeah, but that was our approach. If, like me, looking at this, what you would think about is we've got these self-contained bits of software and we're plugging them into something big. What we should be thinking about is integration testing. And at the time, it's sort of what? Integration? No, we don't need that. We do end-to-end testing. We test everything on the front end. As we said, we do exhaustive testing. We don't need to check every single one of those. And to do that, all of this stuff, it took about, I say 30 days, but I say 30 days-ish. Because at the time when I joined, we were hemorrhaging overtime, and we found that for each change that we delivered, we were generally using about 33 days worth of effort to do it. So it was great, as you can tell. So how much effort did it take to do one of these? It took 54 people, a team of 54 people to do this every month. So I'm going to breeze through 8 years worth of my time in the team in about 7 minutes. So it's going to be a bit quick. So I'm going to breeze over some details. So first and foremost, we need to change this. So we need to get rid of the "we can test everything" attitude. We can't accept that, and we can't give the expectation that we will test everything. It's not possible. There's millions and millions of combinations through these code. We need to move away from that. We need to start thinking sensibly. We need to take a risk-based approach, and we need to start targeting the right things to test. So we get rid of that. So a couple of years go by, we've got this embedded. We're starting to think about testing as a craft. We're starting to do things properly. Time is right to start talking about automation again. And we come against a problem. The problem is we haven't got any budget for automation. So first thing we did is we had a look around the wider department to see what sort of things other people are using, what they got embedded, what could we steal, what could we get for free, if you like. So the first thing we had that was going on was this program, which some of you may know, is Quality Center's UFT automation. And we had a lot of this going on across the wider department. And we had large, again, end-to-end automated tests and batches that ran overnight. They produced lots and lots of lovely screenshots that we could do. But we were thinking that we wanted to be a bit more focused with what we were doing, and we wanted to try and, if we were going to do this, we wanted to do it right. So we wanted to look at the testing at the right level. Now, I'm not saying that it can't do that for anyone who has got experience with it, but the capability, shall we say, that we had prevented us from knowing that. So at that time, we decided we weren't going to look at UFT. So next up, the new shiny toy that we had in the department was SpecFlow. Again, some of you may know, you probably know an awful lot more about it than me, but so the teams that were using it to automate their web journeys, to set up testing that way. And it was all very nice with the given when-then scenarios. It was all very good. But again, as is back-end, it wasn't using so a web journey, and we didn't have the capability to adapt it for what we wanted. But then we thought about, well, what if we could just use Selenium? Because again, that's lovely and free, and we like free things. So we found that we could plug that into an AS400 system. There was a web window that we could use for that. But again, our capability limited us to saying that we could only use this to test end-to-end, and we didn't really want to do that. So having spent time looking at that, we decided to take the bold step that we weren't going to use that, and we were going to go and build our own tools. We were going to build something bespoke. This caused some unrest across the department, particularly in the UFT community, who were very unhappy that we weren't using their tool. And I, at one point, got summoned to come and explain our decisions to them, an offer that I very politely declined. But, so we decided we were going to do this, and we were going to do it right, and we weren't going to rush ourselves, and we were going to work our way through to get it right. So we looked at what's the first problem we've got. The first problem we've got is our regression testing. It's rubbish. We need to sort this out. So we decided we were going to abandon everything that was running through our AS400. Try that again. We were going to abandon anything running through our AS400 systems. We were going to test the contained objects that we were actually looking at that contained all the rating. So we built a batch harness that would run around about 250,000 risk profiles, dump them all into an SQL database, and then compare them against what's currently live and what's currently in development. Now, I mentioned that we had that when we started. It was about five days that would take, and it was unreliable. When we first got this in our first iteration, we got that down to 9 hours as a runtime. We're on about iteration 32 now, but when we started, that was a big improvement. And what it also gave us is it gave us a much bigger sample size and a comparative sample size, which was much more useful to us and our stakeholders to say, this is what we think this is going to perform like when we put it live. Next up, we looked at what we thought was the most important thing for this type of development. We looked at integration testing, and we thought, can we use that same architecture of creating that database, those 250,000 profiles, can we use them to run integration tests? So we tried that. When we first got going, we wrote a suite of tests, which took us a while to sit and think about and get right. We didn't want to overstretch ourselves, and all we looked at with these tests is was the responses we were getting, would they be desirable? We were just looking to see, are they valid? Are we going to get valid responses? We'll worry about whether it's right or not a bit later on. Sorry, whether it's desirable a bit later on. Right now, we just want to make sure it integrates. Then the next thing we did is we sat and we talked about, we now want to do specific testing. What if we don't have batches? What if I want to look at a single risk? So we built another test harness. We built one for single risk testing that let us run directly against the scheme, against the runtime engines, and get our risk profiles that way. So having done that, we then looked again at what we were doing. So this is probably about 6 years has gone by, we've got to this point. And we looked again about what we were doing. And we found that we had people sitting around doing nothing for periods of time. And we looked at it and we said, well, and we realized that we were being held up by our release structure. So we still went through a release team who we passed our development to, and they promoted it through the environments and put it live. So we decided then that we were again going to go and do something bespoke, and we built our own deployment tool. And that is where things really took off for us, because having got that embedded and where we are now, we've gone from that, let's say 33 days worth of development time to get these changes done. We're now running at about 2 hours. It takes us from start to finish to do that process. In terms of quality, which is obviously my interest in this, is that from when I first joined, which is into the first day we started looking at it, we were generally looking at about 80 errors introduced to live on this per year through these changes. Last year we had 4, so it's been a really massive improvement for us to be able to get this quality built in. Also, we no longer have 54 people doing this work. Over time, we have not replaced through attrition as people leave or move on or progress or choose alternative careers. But what's more important for this is that those people who are still working for us, they're doing targeted work. They're actually working on something focused and something useful, and not just sitting there keep bashing buttons and running test cases in that they don't really care about. They're actually passionate about their work now. So, for the future, there's 2 things we've got going on at the moment. My big interest, if you like, is that looking again at what our blockers are and what's holding us up is the actual receipt and promotion of these object files that come into us. The realization is that why can't we just give these tools to our insurer counterparts, to our suppliers who are giving us it, and why can't we get them to do it for us and do the integration testing themselves? And then it only comes onto us and our estate once it's passed all our checks and once we've approved it and it's fit for purpose. So we're currently working on facilities to let them access our own systems to actually do these things ourselves. What we're also doing is we realised, as I said, we have 32 panels that we manage and we work for. We are looking at whether we can adapt some of our tools to project where we think this development is going to impact across all of those panels. And so when we actually put in something, if we negotiate with an insurer to give us a price reduction, we can see what impact that is going to have on the business we write, what we're going to offer to our customers, and how things are, how that is genuinely actually going to impact us. So that was actually everything I had to talk about now. So yeah, any questions? Hello, that.
So we clearly introduced a lot of changes to our system.
Yeah.
What do you think was the most effective way of propagating the change?
The best way of implementing. The best way is actually the way we've involved the team in doing that, and actually talked about the journey we want to go on and how we want to change and improve things. Because as you can imagine, if you're one of those 54 people 8 years ago, you're not getting a lot of job satisfaction. You're not enjoying yourself with a blame culture. You're not enjoying yourself doing things, and you can't see the value that you're doing. All you're seeing is the downside. So actually spending that time and showing the tangible improvements that you're getting from the changes that you're making, it has a feel-good factor that comes with it. And when you get that feel-good factor, people want to do so. They start bringing their own ideas to the table. They start helping us go on that journey. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, but
Mhm.
management or middle management that are asking you, what are you doing?
So there's a couple of measures we use. So as a BGL group, we have a company-wide what's called our pulse survey, where we ask our employees anonymously, what do you think about working here? What are these things like? What do you like? What don't you like? And we can break that down into team level. And we can say this is what the impact it's having us. And we can see that our employee satisfaction scores are going up over time. We can see that when we drill down into that, we can ask our customers, so actually what do you think? Tell us, literally, we'll listen to you, tell us what you think. But ultimately, you can see it through results as well. You can see that the team is delivering more effectively, productivity goes up, your velocity improves without sacrificing what you're trying to deliver and the quality of what you're delivering. Any more for any more? Fantastic. Thank you very much.